Yes, I'm filming in a new place and I'm pretty stoked about it, but as you can tell, everything is pretty bare in here still. So hang in there with me while I get all the decorations hung up and make sure the studio looks, exactly how I want it to. But right off the bat here, I want to shout out a buddy of mine, Joshua Butler, for making an amazing video which inspired this one, where he requested a credit limit increase on 20 plus of his credit cards all in one video. Although I'm not quite as cool as Josh, his video did make me want to try something similar myself. So what I decided to do was request a credit limit increase on 4 of my credit cards, but each one of those credit cards comes from a different lender. That way we can see how each lender responds to a credit limit increase request given all of the same exact information. Before we get into the footage of me requesting these credit limit increases live a couple weeks back, I also want to cover a few other topics here really quickly. So part 1 is going to be all about credit report freezing. Part 2 will be why you should and shouldn't request credit limit increases. Part 3 will be all about how to increase your approval odds with a credit limit increase request. And then finally, we'll get into part 4, which is me requesting the credit limit increases live. Let's dive into part 1, credit report freezing. So in order to do this, all you have to do is go to each of the bureau's websites and request a credit freeze be put on your credit report. I went ahead and took a screenshot from each of the 3 bureaus so you can see, what that credit freeze screen looks like. I didn't film this process because it really was just a simple procedure, but I did want to have a quick section on credit report freezes in general because I wanted to make it clear that I did every single one of these credit limit increase requests while having my credit reports frozen. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to ensure that I did not get a hard pull for any of those requests. These days, most lenders are not going to hard pull you for a credit limit increase, but there still are some out there that might. So of course you want to read through the fine print and see if they're going to do a hard pull for your request. But if you didn't read through that and you had your credit reports frozen, then they couldn't go through with the process. So that would save you from getting a hard pull if you didn't want one. Or on the other hand, it would just let you know that you need to go thaw out your credit report. And when it comes to thawing your credit reports, which is, the opposite of freezing them, with all 3 credit bureaus, you can actually schedule a temporary thaw, which is something I've utilized recently when applying for my new apartment, where you just input the start date of the thaw and then the end date where your credit report is then going to be frozen again. Now that we know more about the freezing and thawing of our credit reports, let me quickly cover why you should and should not request credit limit increases. And the first reason that you should request one is if you want to decrease your credit utilization. The way that your credit utilization is calculated is both on an individual card basis as well as an overall basis. But let's take it on an individual card basis for this example. Let's say you have one card that you're spending a ton on and you really just want to get that credit limit increased because you're just having a high utilization on that card every month with how much you're spending on it. So to calculate your credit utilization, they're taking your total balance on that credit card and dividing it by that credit limit on that card, multiplying by 100, and there's your credit utilization. Personally, I try to keep mine under 5% on all of my cards if I can, and usually I have to make early payments to make that happen. But also, I was kind of getting tired of making those early payments, hence why I wanted to make this video and increase the credit limits on some of my most used cards. And it really all just comes back to the fact that whenever you get a credit limit increase on a card, if your balances on that card stay the same, meaning you don't spend more money on that card because you have a higher credit limit, then the bottom side of that fraction, your credit limit, will be higher. Therefore, your credit utilization on that card will decrease. That is obviously a good thing for your credit score, and hence why credit limit increase requests can actually be a really good thing. The second reason you should is if you do have some really big purchases coming up. This kind of ties into point number 1, because if you have a large purchase coming up and you put it all on one card with a lower credit limit, that's going to raise your utilization like crazy, which will hurt your credit score, at least temporarily. But if you get a credit limit increase on that card, then your overall utilization on that card will go down, even with those larger purchases theoretically. So as long as you are being responsible with these large purchases, and like I said, not just making more purchases on a card that you just got a credit limit increase on because you have quote unquote a higher limit and more money, then in general, it's going to work out in your favor. But that takes me into why you shouldn't request a credit limit increase. And the first reason is just to have a bigger number. I know a lot of people out there that just seem to think that a higher credit limit is really cool. And while I guess it's cool to see that you have a high credit limit, for a lot of people, that's extremely dangerous. So if you're somebody that's out there and just have no good reason to request a credit limit increase, then I would not just go and do it because you want a higher number showing, on your credit report. I think that's a bad way to go about it. And the second reason you shouldn't, which is probably the biggest reason, which we've already covered, is to spend more money that you don't have. Adding to your credit limit does not mean that you're adding to your bank account. I hope that's an obvious statement for me to say, but it's very important to understand. If you're being responsible and requesting a credit limit increase to decrease your utilization, that's completely fine. That's the whole point of credit limit increases, really. But if you're increasing your credit limits, thinking that you're adding more money somehow to your bank account because of that, do not request a credit limit increase increase. And honestly, I would probably recommend that you don't have credit cards in the first place. Credit card debt is real, and I just don't want to see any of y'all wrapped up in it. Now, at this point, I assume everybody requesting a credit limit increase is doing it for the right reasons. So let's talk about how you can increase your approval odds for a credit limit increase. First of all, we need to understand what a bank is looking for when trying to approve you for a credit limit increase. The main thing that they want to see when it comes to really any loans in general is a low debt to income ratio. Just as it sounds, what that means is they want to see you having low amounts of debt and high amounts of income. While that is true for any loan you do with a bank, it applies to credit limit increases in a more specific way. Whenever you go to apply for a credit card in the first place, they care about this number right off the bat. But for a credit limit increase, they're obviously going to want to see some kind of change to those numbers, theoretically. And by changing those numbers, I mean either your debts are lowering or your income is rising. This doesn't necessarily have to be the case for them to approve you, but let's just put ourselves in the banker's shoes. If someone came to you asking for a higher credit limit, but their income hasn't increased and their debts have either stayed the same or are just actually rising, would you really want to give them more access to money that they don't have? That's why I personally try to time a credit limit increase with either an increase in my income or whenever I've paid off a good amount of one of my debts. Another way you can technically improve your odds of getting approved is by actually utilizing the card that you want to get a credit limit increase on. Hopefully this is intuitive to you, but again, we can try to put ourselves in the banker's shoes here. If you come to them without using the card that you're requesting a credit limit increase on for 6 to 12 months, and you have no expectation of using that card anymore in the future, what point is there for them to give you a credit limit increase? Of course, I have to note here once again that this does not mean that you should be spending extra money that you weren't spending before on this card just to get a credit limit increase. Instead of spending more money that you weren't before, you would rather just shift some spending from your other cards to this card for a short amount of time before requesting the credit limit increase in hopes that they would see you using that card more and that increase your odds of being approved. Again, do not spend more money in general just for the sake of a credit limit increase. That defeats the whole purpose of the credit card game, but do consider shifting some of your spending from other cards to the one that you're wanting a credit limit increase on. With all of that being said, let's go ahead and dive into part 4, me requesting these credit limit increases live. All right, so starting with the first credit card I want to get a credit limit increase on, that's going to be the Chase Sapphire Preferred. And as you can see here, my limits on my Chase cards really aren't like insanely high. My OG Chase Freedom used to be my Chase Freedom Student, which is why it's so low. I don't use it enough to really justify requesting a credit limit increase on it, so I'm just going to leave it for now. My Freedom Unlimited actually has a credit limit of just $4,300. That was the second card I ever got approved for, so also not very high. I would like to get this one higher at some point, but not really the priority right this second. And my Chase Sapphire Preferred was the third card I ever got approved for, so it's also not super high. It's at $10,100, which is great, but I've had so much change since I applied for this card that I feel like I should get a credit limit increase of some kind. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is select choose this card, and then now all I have to do is put in my total gross annual income and my monthly mortgage or rent payment. Also, keep in mind this is gross annual income. This is not your net income, so this does not include, taxes already being taken out. This is your gross annual income. Now that I have that input, I can go ahead and click next. Does everything look okay? Yes, it does, and all I have to do is click submit. Moment of truth. And there we go. Card number 1 down, got a new credit limit of $16,800. My target credit limit for this card was $20,000, but of course I couldn't actually put that in during the application. So to get a 67% increase on my credit limit, that's pretty good in my books. Now that we were successful with card number 1, hope we can have the same luck with card number 2 here, and that's going to be my Amex Blue Business Plus. I already came to my account services page for this card, and all I have to do is select request a credit limit increase. Once I do that, it does actually allow me to request what credit line I want on this card. Now, I've never requested a credit limit increase on any Amex card, and for those of y'all that know the American Express credit card rules, usually even within the first few months of you having the card, you can request a credit limit increase of 3x your previous limit. Now, I already got started with a limit of $10,000, but I applied for this card, I don't even know, a long time ago, and I thought I might as well go ahead and try to get that 3x credit limit for the channel, but also because if I do get approved for a higher credit limit on this business card, you would hope that the next business credit cards that I get approved for have a higher starting limit because of this. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually increase my line of credit to $30,000 just to see what they do. Now I can click continue. Now I can go ahead and input my total annual income, which is going to be your gross once again, and also my annual business revenue since this is a business credit card. Now, the beauty of this application is that my annual income and my business revenue actually should be like the same now. That is because I do YouTube full-time, of course. So I'm hoping that the increase in both of those numbers just makes it an easy decision for them to approve me, but also may actually require me to go to some kind of financial review because they're like, where the heck are these numbers coming from? But I guess y'all are going to find out with me, and I really hope that it's just a really easy process, but with Amex lately, you never know. Now, with both of those input, I'm going to go ahead and click submit. Well, I mean, geez, there you go. Apparently, they were not able to increase my credit limit to $30,000, but were able to give me $28,300. That is the most random number I've ever seen, but it looks like I did get approved for a much higher credit limit. That is an increase of $18,300. That is a 283% increase of my last credit limit. So, I mean, that's great to see. Hopefully all the other lenders now will see that higher credit limit on my account, at least for the business side of things, and give me a higher starting credit limit because of that, but we'll see. Now that we are 2 for 2, I'm, not feeling super lucky about the rest of my applications here, but you never know what's going to happen. Now I'm going to go ahead and request another credit limit increase on my Citi Custom Cash. This is a card that I've actually already requested a credit limit increase on manually in the past, but that was like over 10 months ago, I think. And considering my limit still is not great, I'm hoping that this actually pushes me to a higher limit, maybe getting me into the next tier, closer to like $10,000, because this one started at $3,000. Now it's at $4,500, but I'd like to cross that 5 digits if I can. Is that going to happen though? We're about to find out. So I'm going to go ahead and click request a credit limit increase. Now that we're here, again, it shows me my current credit limit of $4,500. It does say they're not going to obtain a credit bureau report, but as I talked about earlier, I froze all of my credit reports for these applications. And then all it asked me to put in is my total annual income once again, and my monthly mortgage or rent payment. Both of these numbers are more favorable than they used to be the last time that I applied for a credit limit increase. So I'm hoping that I get lucky here and get that bumped a decent bit, but we're going to have to find out. Let's go ahead and click next. I'm able to review all of my information here, and if it looks correct, I can submit it. Once again, it's not letting me actually input what credit limit I would want on the card, so we're just going to have to take what they give us. But let's go ahead and submit this application. Well, once again, they gave me an increase of $1,500, which I guess is helpful. This is my gas credit card, so I use it very regularly, and I was hoping to increase that limit by much more than just $1,500. But hey, this should help my credit utilization a little bit, so I'm still happy about it. Okay, and now it's time for the lender that I'm the least excited about, that of course being Capital One. Now, after watching the inspiration for this video, Josh Butler's video, he got a $1,000 credit limit increase from Capital One after requesting like a $30,000 increase or something like that. So I'm really not looking forward to this one. Probably just going to request about 10,000 more to see if they'll give me any kind of boost. But this is also my most recent personal credit card that I've applied for. So I'm not really expecting much, even though this account is more than 6 months old at this point. So we'll go ahead and come down to request credit line increase. It's going to ask me for my total annual income, my employment status, what occupation I have, my monthly mortgage or rent payment, how much I'll spend each month on this card, my maximum desired credit line, why I'm requesting a credit limit increase, and then I can submit it. So as you can tell, Capital One's already being way more annoying than the rest of them, but I guess I'm going to put stuff in here and just see what happens. So after putting all that information in, I'll just go ahead and click submit and just, expect the worst. Well, I guess I did better than Josh, so that's good. I got a credit limit increase of $2,000, so bumping my limit to $22,000 instead of $20,000. I guess not bad. Okay, so now that we're done with all of those, got approved for all of them, which is awesome. Here are the final numbers. For my Chase Sapphire Preferred, I got a 66% credit limit increase from $10,100 to $16,800. On my Amex Blue Business Plus, I got a 183% increase, not 283%, like I said earlier, from $10,000 to $28,300. On my Citi Custom Cash, I got a 33% increase from $4,500 to $6,000. And on my Venture X, I got a 10% increase from $20,000 to $22,000. That brings my average percentage of credit limit increases to 73%. Now keep in mind once again that this probably is not the most responsible thing to do, is just request credit limit increases on all of your cards all at once. But for somebody like myself who has never done it, it is cool to see what is possible if you just spend more time in the credit card game and have smart financial habits, have your income increase, have your debts decrease, and then request a credit limit increase when it makes sense for you. I think I was very lucky to have all of my credit limit increase requests approved. If I actually did it with 20 different credit cards like Josh did, I would have some denials in here for sure. But since I only did 4 or one with each of the main lenders, I just had a better chance of getting approved. Now that I have these higher credit limits though, it's extremely important to note that I will not be spending more money on these cards just because of that. If you are going to request a credit limit increase just so you can spend more money, that's dumb. Don't do that. The main reason that I did this was one, so I could show y'all how to do it with each of the big lenders, but also because I want my overall credit utilization to be lower based on my natural spending. Now that I have these higher credit limits, as long as I don't increase my spending, my total credit utilization is going to drop dramatically, and that's going to help me to increase my score quicker on autopilot. I have to reiterate, do not just request a credit limit increase because you want to spend more money, but do it when it actually makes sense for you. If you're interested in seeing how I got approved for these cards in the first place, let me direct you over to my Watch Me Apply playlist, where you can see me apply for each one of these credit cards live. And unfortunately, Odin isn't here at the new apartment yet, but as always, we both want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.